We named this a conference, so you won't be looking at your watch to see what time it is. Because when you go to a conference, you just go and you know you're going to be there. So I just promise I'll let you out before midnight or before in the morning. I want to address a couple of things first. Bob Harrington. Anybody remember Bob Harrington? The chaplain of Bourbon Street. Anybody? Oh, this is California. I'm sorry. He was the chaplain of Bourbon Street in New Orleans. He would go in the bars and the strippers would leave, they'd put their clothes on, and he would get on a table and preach. For years, he did that. Well, one night, Bob Harrington said he was driving home from Hamby, Louisiana, which is on the north side of Lake Pontchartrain. He was driving on the bridge going back into New Orleans. And he said it had just started to rain a little bit, and his windshield wipers were on. And he was thinking about something else, and all of a sudden he looked in front of him, and a couple of 1,000 feet in front of him, he saw an object moving. Well, as he slowed down a little bit, and as he got closer, he noticed that it was a person standing in the middle of his lane, waving their arms. Well, his first thought goes to this, that on the north side of Lake Pontchartrain, there's a mental institution. And he thought, well, somebody has broken out of the mental institution, swam out, climbed up, and is trying to get a ride into New Orleans. So he doesn't stop. He's continuing. Well, as he gets closer and closer, he sees the person that their clothes are torn, they're wet, and they're waving their arms, screaming. He lets his window down a little bit to hear what they're saying, and this is what the person was screaming. The bridge is out. The bridge is out. Stop! The bridge is out. And he said he screeched to a halt just before going over into Lake Pontchartrain. And as he got out of his car, the man came to him and he said, "Sir," he said, a barge has knocked the abutment of the bridge out. And he said, "I've tried to stop several vehicles." But he said a bus went over and several cars had gone over. And he said, "You're the first person that I've been able to stop before going over into Lake Pontchartrain." Now, imagine this. Because he stopped, how many other people's lives behind him were saved? Yeah. If you can just stop one person from going over into devastation and destruction, yes, there is no telling how many others behind him that the repercussion will affect.
Yeah. Good.
We've called this conference One by One. I wanted to read something to you tonight. How many of you have heard about the revival that's going on in Mobile, Alabama? Anybody? There's a revival that's been going on for over a year in Mobile, Alabama. Pastor John Kilpatrick, who was the pastor of the Brownsville revival, he's pastoring a church in Daphne, Alabama called the Church of His Presence, or the Church of the Presence. His Presence. Well, about a year ago, revival broke out. A young man from England came, and revival broke out. They had to move into the Mobile Convention Center. And thousands of people had come. Miracles. If you have God TV, they show it on God TVs several times. I saw on the internet today that next Friday night, the 15th, they're going to start back up again. They take a few days off or a few weeks off at a time, and then they'll come back and start the revival again. How many of you know if it's God, you know, if you take a few days off, God's not going anywhere. He's waiting for you to come back. But something struck me. Mobile, Alabama. It's called the Bay of Mobile. Anybody ever driven I-10 through Mobile? It's called the Bay of the Mobile Bay. But before it was called the Mobile Bay, it was called the Bay of the Holy Spirit. The pirates that came over, the pirates from Spain and Portugal, named that bay the Bay of the Holy Spirit. Well, something incredible happens there several times a year. And I want you to listen to this. There's a phenomenon, a natural phenomenon that occurs sporadically on the shores of Mobile Bay, a large body of water on Alabama's Gulf Coast. What happens is, at least annually, and sometimes several times a year, something called Jubilee happens in the Mobile Bay. And it says sometimes a 15-mile stretch of coast representing most of the eastern shore can be affected. The large volume of crustacean and fish that a Jubilee can produce is hard to overstate. What happens is fish, shrimp, oysters, crabs, all kinds of fish and crustacean are drawn to this part of Mobile Bay. They get into this area. Now watch. The conditions have to be right. The wind has to be blowing from the west to the east. It has to be a high tide. But all of these fish get into this one area. And let me read you this one statement. It says, the result is a rapid depletion of oxygen in parts of the bay, driving fish to the surface seeking oxygenated water. Now Jesus said, out of your belly would flow rivers of oxygenated water. What happens is these fish, they come to the top, the tide takes them to the shore, the tide goes back out, and all of these fish, they said that you can drive your pickup truck down there and in a few minutes load your pickup truck with fish, with shrimp, oysters, crabs, anything. Just let me tell you what's happening around the world. People are looking for water that has life. I would not be surprised if people are moving to Sonora. They have no earthly clue why they're moving to Sonora. These fish have no earthly idea why they're being drawn to this Mobile Bay. But all of a sudden, something happens. Jesus, go ahead and look up Luke chapter 5. We're going there in a minute. I was watching a fishing show not long ago in Florida. I guess since a lot of retired people go to Florida, the fish go there too. I was watching this fishing show. There is a river in Florida where at certain times of the year you can be boating down the river and fish just start jumping in your boat. Now that's the kind of fishing I like. I mean, it was incredible, Pastor. You're just going down the river and all of a sudden these fish just start jumping in your boat. Now, let me predicate this by saying they're not cleaned yet. They have not been filleted and flash frozen. They are fresh fish. Am I preaching yet? When fish jump into your boat, or when the tide brings them in and they're looking for fresh oxygenated water, some of them may have a lot of tattoos on their body. Some of them may have piercings more than us Pentecostals like. But I have never yet been fishing when a fillet jumped in my boat. Doesn't happen. You're at Luke chapter 5, say yes? Yes. All right. Let me deal with one more thing before I go to Luke. If I were to, what's your name? Al. Al. How you doing, Al? Thank you for coming down from that snow and being with us tonight. If I were to give you, if I give you a choice, and I said, Al, I'm going to write you a check tonight for $1 million, and there's money in the bank. I mean, anybody can write a check for $1 million, but to have the money to back it up is another thing. If I were to write you a check for $1 million tonight, you go home, cash it in the morning, if Wells Fargo Bank is open on Saturday. Or, if I said, Al, I will today give you 1 penny, and tomorrow I'll give you 2 pennies, and the next day I'll double it, 8 pennies, and the next day 16 pennies, for 31 days, which would you take? No, you just tell me right off. You take the pennies. Now, why would you take the pennies? Multiplication. Because multiplication. I sat down one day and I figured out that in 31 days, if you just start with 1 penny and you double it every day, that by the end of 31 days, are you ready for this? You would have $10,737,418.24. Now, how many of you, before you knew that, would have taken the $1 million? Now, I know why. I know why you'd take the $1 million, because Jesus might come before 31 days. You sucker. I know. What's the difference in 1 by 1? There was a song that came out in the 80s. Each one, reach one. If each one would reach one. Pastor, you couldn't hold the people. In 31 days, you could not hold the people. Luke 5, you're there? You've been there. Luke 5, verse 1. So it was, as the multitude pressed about him, I love this part. They pressed about him just to hear the word. That he stood by the lake of Gennesaret and saw 2 boats standing by the lake, but the fishermen had gone from them and were washing their nets.